Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're unpacking some literally mind-blowing science from our source material that suggests, get this, we can actually rewire our minds and our identities. We're going to explore a groundbreaking discovery that has completely transformed the worlds of psychology, neuroscience, and personal development. Seriously, we're looking at the mechanics of the human brain and, more importantly, how we can all take back control of those exact mechanics.
So let's just dive right into this. Have you ever desperately wanted to change a habit only to find yourself repeating the exact same behavior a few days later, thinking, man, I am just broken? You tell yourself that you want to be different, you put in all this effort for a little while, but then, almost like magic, that old thought pattern, that old behavior, that same old reaction just sneaks right back in. And in those moments, it is so incredibly easy to think, well, maybe this is just who I am. Maybe I'm just incapable of change.
Section 1. The biggest brain myth. For years, literally decades, science led us to believe this massive, totally discouraging myth that our brains were fixed, like stone, after a certain age. The scientific community basically told us that your personality was permanent. If you were an anxious person, you were just an anxious person. If you were a procrastinator, well, you were stuck with it. But modern research reveals they are actually highly adaptable, kind of like clay. Your brain is constantly shaping itself based on every single thought you have, every habit you perform, and every experience you go through every single day.
Section 2. What is neuroplasticity?
So the crucial point here is neuroplasticity. And honestly, this is an absolute game changer. It turns out your brain is essentially this relentless learning machine that never ever goes on vacation. Whatever you do repeatedly, good or bad, your brain becomes an absolute expert in doing. It's constantly forming new neural connections while weakening the ones you no longer use. What does that mean for you? It means your personality isn't some permanent, set-in-stone identity. It's largely just the result of repeated patterns. You weren't necessarily born anxious or born strictly disciplined. Your brain learned how to be those things. And whatever can be learned can totally be unlearned and rewired.
And the really fascinating thing about this, the brain absolutely does not judge. It just automates. It's incredibly lazy, actually, and it loves efficiency. If you practice worry, you become an expert worrier. But if you practice confidence, that becomes your default neural pathway. Think about it. The brain doesn't want to burn precious energy making new decisions all the time. Remember when you first learned to drive a car or type on a keyboard? It was incredibly difficult and took all of your focus. But after a few months, completely automatic. Your fingers just know where to go. The brain automates things to save energy. But listen, it will automate anxiety just as efficiently as it will automate confidence. So the problem isn't you. The problem is simply the pattern you've been repeating.
To really visualize how we break these automated patterns, imagine a jungle path you've walked down for years, which represents your old habits. Picture walking through a dense forest on the exact same trail every single day. Because it's been walked thousands of times, the path is wide, it's clear, and the ground is packed hard. It is effortless to walk down. This is your old familiar habit. It's the natural default choice for your brain's electrical signals.
But man, this perfectly explains why starting a new habit feels so incredibly awkward at first. When you try to forge a new path for a new habit, you are quite literally hacking through dense brush. It's overgrown, it's confusing, and your brain desperately wants to just retreat to the old familiar road. Because the brain doesn't actually care about what is fair or what is ultimately best for your long-term health. It just cares about familiarity. It prefers the old path simply because it's known, even if that old path leads to a toxic relationship or severe self-doubt. It's a lot like a small stream of water. If a tiny stream flows daily over the exact same ground, it's eventually going to carve this massive automatic canal that is very hard to escape. Once that canal is deep enough, the water just flows through it on autopilot. And this is exactly how neural pathways are formed. The thoughts that repeatedly cross your mind and the reactions you repeatedly have to stress carve these deep grooves in your brain. Then one day you wonder, why do I act like this? When in reality, your brain is just running the program you've spent years training it to run.
Moving on to Section 3. Why change feels uncomfortable?
The research points out a really fascinating parallel here. Discomfort is actually the biological signal that your brain is building a new identity. It's exactly like muscle soreness after the gym. Think about it, if your muscles could talk while you were lifting weights, they would absolutely complain about the discomfort. But we know that physical strength only comes after the stress of the workout, right? Well, neural growth operates the exact same way. Mental strength and confidence only come after the challenge. The problem isn't the discomfort itself. The problem is our interpretation of it. We feel uncomfortable and we falsely assume it means we can't do it, when actually it's the literal signal of progress. Now here's the catch. It turns out positive affirmations just aren't always enough on their own. Why? Because your brain doesn't just blindly believe your words. It looks for the concrete evidence provided by your repeated physical actions. You can stand in front of the mirror all day long and tell yourself, I am confident, I am a leader. But if you immediately run away from the very next challenging situation, your brain looks at your actions, not your words. Your actions are the neural evidence. True transformation only begins when your thoughts and your physical actions start heading in the exact same direction.
Section 4. Action over information.
Our source material really highlights this point. Transformation doesn't happen just by hoarding information. There are millions of people out there who constantly collect knowledge, reading books and watching explainers, but their lives never actually change. Because the brain is not rewired by information, it is rewired by experience. It requires a small 1% change done daily. It's kind of funny, if we went to the gym for 5 days and saw absolutely no change, we wouldn't be surprised, right? Yet we expect instant mental transformation. But the brain is like a muscle. It requires repeated effort. A 1% change today, another 1% tomorrow. By month 6, that incredible compounding effect, which looks completely invisible from the outside, is entirely rewired your internal operating system.
Okay, check out this fascinating mechanic from the data. Attention is a literal construction tool, meaning wherever you direct your focus, whether it's fear or possibility, that is exactly where your neural energy goes to strengthen those specific pathways. The brain doesn't just change through physical action, it changes through where you place your attention. Attention isn't just some fleeting mental state, it is literally a physical building tool. If you spend your whole day focusing on fear, the fear pathway gets wider and stronger. If you focus on comparing yourself to others on social media, the insecurity pathway gets stronger. But if you relentlessly focus on possibility and growth, your confidence pathway becomes an absolute superhighway.
And that brings us to Section 5, Architect of Your Brain. The ultimate takeaway here, every single decision you make, like say choosing discipline over a distraction, is basically casting an invisible vote for the future person you're becoming. Every action is a vote. When you choose focus, you cast a vote for the focused version of yourself. When you choose courage, despite being terrified, you are voting for the courageous version of yourself. And if you just keep casting these votes day after day, week after week, eventually the people around you will say, wow, you've completely changed. But what they won't see are the thousands of invisible votes you cast when no one else was watching.
Honestly, the absolute most empowering takeaway from this entire explainer is this. You are not a prisoner of your biology or your past or your old wiring. You are the active architect of your brain. The moment this truly clicks, all your excuses begin to lose their power. We can no longer hide behind phrases like, well, that's just my nature, or I've always been this way. The data clearly shows your past does not dictate your future limits. Your old mistakes, your old fears, and your previous failures are not your final identity. The brain respects its history for sure, but it is never a slave to it. You literally hold the pen to write the next chapter of your neural pathways.
So, I want to leave you with this final, pretty provocative thought to ponder. If your brain is constantly changing and rewiring itself every single day anyway, whether you direct it or not, what is the very first habit you are going to intentionally choose to rewire? Because your brain is waiting for its next set of instructions, it's ready to be retrained. It is ready to build the focus, the confidence, and the adaptability you need. The discovery isn't just that the human brain can change, the true discovery is that you can change. Awareness is the very first step. Choose your focus, embrace the discomfort of forging that new path, and start building the mind you want today.